Well, October is here and there are 17,000 movies that I could potentially review. Holy crap. This might be the most packed October of my 8 years that I've done YouTube. And it's hard to keep up, but whoever says that 2023 isn't a good year for horror, get the hell out of here, because they're really giving us a lot of great stuff. I got 2 movies that I watched today. We're going to review this one, Totally Killer, and then the other one we're going to review, I can't even tell you what it's called because I can't release it until after the embargo, but it might be my favorite movie of the year, but I can't tell you what it is. Dark Harvest. But let's review Totally Killer. Totally Killer stars Kiernan Shipka, Olivia Holt, and is directed by Nahnatchka Khan. What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new 2023 horror review. You could file this one in the ranks of movies like The Babysitter. You know, just really fun, tongue-in-cheek horror movies, even though there's horror movies that aren't scary at all, and that's what these are. These are more just fun, almost like comedy horror. This is definitely comedy horror. It's called Totally Killer. The album I was listening to, because I always like to throw on an album while I'm getting ready to record, is Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures, one of my all-time favorite bands, one of my all-time favorite albums, and I just wish this album had the art was a little bit bigger on the front. I don't know why they made that so small for Unknown Pleasures, but yeah, what an album. I've been in a Joy Division mood. I watched Control the other day, then I watched the Joy Division documentary right after it. Oh my God, Joy Division fanatic, guys. But anyway, Totally Killer is on Amazon Prime right now. You can go watch it for free if you're a Prime member. I quite enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I said quite twice.
Oh my God. Mom. Fuck off and die. Jesus, Mom. Masita.
Setting this up for you, this is pretty much a combination of like Back to the Future mixed with a slasher. You know, I guess pick your fun slasher. Although back in the 80s, when Back to the Future came out, the slasher movies of that heyday were, I think, a lot more harder edged than this is, which is fine. You know, this is for a certain flavor. Us horror fans, we have at least a dozen different flavors that we can gravitate towards, right? Gravitate, I say gravitate, the Gravitron, one of my favorite carnival rides, is in this movie, and there's a final act based around the Gravitron. It's called the Quantum Drop in this movie. You know, I think Gravitron, maybe that was just a local thing, what they called it back in Mississippi. Have you guys ever heard the term Gravitron, the ride Gravitron? Or was that just a local thing, and maybe that's just weird, I don't know. Yeah, that ride, you are basically sucked to the side of the walls, and it's this spinning chamber. True story, when I rode that ride, I literally saw people throwing up in the ride, but the throw up would come back on their face, and it was hilarious. I forgot to mention Final Girls too. This is kind of like that because she goes into the movie to the 80s. Well, this one, it's set in the present day, but then her friend, Lauren, makes this time machine because at the beginning of the movie, there's this killer with a Max Headroom mask on. And I think a lot of my newer viewers, when they first see this movie, they see that Max Headroom mask. They're like, I don't know what that is, because they don't know what Max Headroom is, because Max Headroom was popular in the 80s, okay? But that's definitely a Max Headroom mask. But basically, the story goes, this killer, back in 1987, he killed 3 people. And then he just disappeared. And so for 35 years later, there was another victim by the name of Pam that he still wanted to get to. And so he returns at the beginning of this movie. Without going into any spoilers, her daughter, Jamie, played by Kiernan Shipka, she goes into her friend's time machine, and she's able to go back to 1987 because that's what it was pre-programmed for. When she gets back there, she goes back for a specific reason, because she can save people. Right away, you're already in. You know, just that premise. That is so damn fun. We love the 80s anyway. People that weren't even like born in the 80s seem to love the 80s these days. And there's just something so charming about time travel movies where you can go back to the time where your parents were probably your age, or young. I can say I saw Back to the Future in the theater when it came out in '85. And even then, it was really interesting to go back to the 50s. That's what that movie did. Because not just it being the 50s, which, by the way, my dad was a teenager in the 50s. I was a teenager in the 80s, like Marty McFly. And I would often talk to my dad about what was it like being a teenager in the 50s and how cool was that, And he said it was really cool. He liked it. But just the idea of occupying the same space with your parents who are at the time the same age as you are, that can really bake your noodle. And that was kind of the genesis of the idea for Back to the Future in the first place. So this is mixing that with a slasher movie, because when she goes back in time, she's trying to save some of the victims. And notice I'm being very careful with my words here, because there's something about this movie that I don't want to tell you that is in the first act of the movie. It sets up really the reason why she goes back there. You could probably figure out what I'm talking about, but I don't want to give it away. I don't like giving spoilers. It's crazy how much some of you are so sensitive about spoilers, and I get that, so I respect it, but it's hard to review movies, okay? Jesus. Now, what I love about this movie, besides the great acting, the charm, the funny moments, the great pacing, is the fact that when she goes back in time, and they do change the rules up just a little bit. Of course, they mentioned Back to the Future quite a few times. Her being back there, she is changing things up. So when she goes back to the future, then things aren't going to be exactly the same. And you're just waiting for that, which is really cool. But imagine a slasher movie where you go back in time and 3 victims were killed, and maybe you save one of them, maybe the order of the victims being killed is changed, maybe a different person is killed. The possibilities are endless, and boy, is it so fun. This is the type of script that kind of writes itself along the way because of all the possibilities. Most of the time when you're writing a script, you can't think of anything to say or do. It's like racking your brain just to come up with an idea. But sometimes a story comes along, it's so far ahead of you, and you can't keep up with all the possibilities. It's kind of writes itself. And that's what's so fun about this script. Now, one unique thing about this killer, too, it's the Sweet 16 killer. And he stabs his victims at the age of 16, and he stabs them 16 times. So that's the unique thing besides the Max Headroom mask. They don't hold back on the blood, but you can tell it's like CGI blood in most of the scenes, which is kind of annoying these days, right? Sometimes you wish technology didn't exist for certain things, but it doesn't really take you out of the movie, It is kind of graphic sometimes because he has to kill each victim 16 times. Also, and I kind of alluded to some of this stuff earlier, but you're open for some interesting, twists in the third act, right? It's also a whodunit, who's behind that mask. And one thing I will say is this movie definitely kept me guessing. Personally, I didn't think it was that predictable, okay? It quite surprised me with some of the twists in the movie. But I think the biggest thing about this movie, it's just so fun. It's just really fun. We love having these types of movies in October. It is set on Halloween too, by the way, which is really cool. The next movie I'm about to review after this one is also set on Halloween. A lot of movies coming out around the Halloween holiday, based around that time, which is fun. By the way, I always like to, spot an actor or an actress, and I'm like, I've seen that person before, and there's a person in this movie, Liana Liberato. She played one of the other characters in, is it Quinn? In Scream 6. And I thought she looked really familiar. And she's in this movie too. She has a pretty good part, so yeah. If I had to pick it apart I would say they're just having a tough time coming up with interesting masks for killers these days. I don't know what it is. Right away, I'm thinking of like the Happy Death Day killer, kind of similar looking. But those masks just aren't scary. They're not creepy. I don't know what it is. And it kind of takes something away from the killer, Even in a horror comedy, I like a killer that is downright creepy. You don't want to be near this person. You don't want to be in their presence, right? And the killer in this movie, as vicious as he is, he doesn't come off as that scary. That's a small gripe. I think you go into this type of movie for, a certain vibe. and it's just really fun. So definitely giving it a low purchase worthy, okay? I highly recommend Totally Killer. Like that name too, by the way. And they do mention Michael Myers in the movie too, which is kind of fun. So have you guys seen Totally Killer? Let me know down in the comments. Looking forward to hearing them. Also be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. On Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. You know, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.